friends. Hi, how are you all doing? My name is August. Welcome to Cozy Rosy Reads, and today I'm doing my summer book haul. I am so excited to share with you all these wonderful books that I've accumulated since the start of the summertime, probably around like May or June. I haven't done a book haul in a while, so I am really excited to share these books with you all and just kind of get into a summer mood. I am one who likes to read very seasonally. I like to read books that are set in fall. In the fall time. I like to read winter books in the winter. And to be honest, fall and winter are probably my more preferred seasons. Summer books for me are very interesting. I don't know about you all, but in the summertime, I really do like to read lighter books. I like to read books that have like botanical elements. I like to read books that might have a little bit more relationship focused, more literary fiction. But I have noticed through all of my past book hauls and stuff that I tend to gravitate towards books that I want to read in the fall or winter time. I think having books on my shelves that are more for like spring or summer is just not something I proactively do. And that is something that I decided to change in doing this kind of summer oriented book haul. Some of these books I accumulated this summer, but I probably won't read them until like a fall or winter season. But majority of them I did want to pick up with the intention in mind of reading them or saving them for warmer weather, especially here in the Midwest when we have like very distinct seasons. I definitely noticed a lack in my summer books that just like are just exude summer vibes, might be a little bit lighter, might be more YA, might be shorter books, all of that fun stuff. So I'm really excited to share these books with you all. Majority of them are thrifted, so when going through all of them, I will also tell you where I got them. Hi Winston. If you're new to my channel, this is Winston. I have two beautiful Sphinx cats, and I guess he'll just kind of be in here today. But alas, enough of me yapping. Let's go ahead and get into the books. I'm really excited to share these with you. They are so eclectic. I have decided to put them in alphabetical order yet again. I've done this in my past two other book hauls, which I will link down below too if you are interested. So let's just go ahead and get started. The first book that I have and want to share with you all today is Angel Time by Anne Rice. Look at this beautiful shiny cover. Oh my gosh. And it has these beautiful deckled edges. I found this while thrifting at Goodwill, so it was like 99 cents. And the wonderful thing about this book is that I have actually already read it, but I read it on my Kindle as an ebook because I had picked up the sequel. This is a duology series called The Songs of the Seraphim. Earlier this year, I want to say in like February or March, I read that book. And I didn't know when I picked it up, when I thrifted it at a library book sale, that it was the sequel to this one. So I just found a copy from my library and just read it on my Kindle. So this was just such a good surprise to find it used at Goodwill and just kind of add it to my collection because I already have the sequel. This is a really interesting duology series. It has one of the most like unique kind of plots that I read from pretty recently. This follows a young man who is actually a hitman. He's an assassin and he really struggles with his job. He doesn't like killing people for a living and he always questions his life if it's worth living when all he does is kill people. But he's really good at his job. He then encounters an angel named Malachi, and the angel tells him like your soul can be redeemed. Even if you are an assassin, you're still a good person and your soul can still be redeemed. And Malachi and this assassin, this hitman, decide to go back in time in order to kind of like redeem his soul. And they travel to like 15th century Rome, where the Jewish faith is being persecuted by Christians. And I just find it to be such an interesting concept, especially because I personally am not a religious person or spiritual person at all, but I really loved the conversation this had on religion and the way that certain faiths have been persecuted over the years. I just found it incredibly interesting. I thought it was really fun. I think Anne Rice did a really beautiful job of creating characters that I could personally just really want to love and protect. Like they just felt so incredibly wholesome, even though one is an assassin and one is an angel. Like you could just feel this kind of like love and humanity through this series. So I'm just really happy that I was able to find a copy and now I can just keep it and now I can recommend it to other people in my life and have copies of it and I can pass the love along in my own personal library. So that was the first book, Angel Time by Anne Rice. Oh, and if you're interested, the sequel is called Of Love and Evil. Next, we have a very interesting book and that is Clade by James Bradley. I just picked this up at Dollar Tree. I love this cover so much. Look at that, it is beautiful. So I found it at my local Dollar Tree, which means everything there is $1. And first, obviously, I was incredibly intrigued by this beautiful, stunning cover. I'm gonna read the back because I'm not super familiar with this plot. I had never heard of this book until I saw it, and I absolutely love that it's a paperback. If you're you're new to this channel, I have a thing with chunky paperbacks. Like, it does something to me. The back reads, on a beach in Antarctica, scientist Adam Leith marks the passage of the summer solstice. Back in Sydney, his partner Ellie waits for the results of her latest round of IVF treatment. That result, when it comes, will change both their lives and propel them into a future neither could have predicted. In a collapsing England, Adam will battle to survive an apocalyptic storm. In the aftermath of a pandemic, a young man finds solace in building virtual recreations of the dead, and new connections will be formed from the most unlikely beginnings. I still don't know what the frick this book is about, even after reading the back, but I am here for it. I love that. I love topics like this that don't seem to quite make sense. Maybe this isn't an alternate reality. I definitely think this was published before 2020. Yeah, this was published in 2017 before the actual pandemic happened. So I am just really excited for this. I think it's absolutely stunning. It sounds like such a unique plot, an author I personally have never heard of, so I'm just really looking forward to reading this one. It sounds a little bit like a literary fiction, but then also a pandemic and apocalypse, so maybe there are some science fiction elements in here. So that is Clade. Next we have a classic that I never really thought that I would ever own, but I found it at Goodwill while thrifting, and I just thought, why the heck not? Let's do it. And that is Dune by Frank Herbert. I love this copy. I just love finding thrifted and used copies, how well loved they are. This is like a mass market paperback, and typically I try to avoid mass market paperbacks at all cost, but this one was just like really calling to me. Again, I love this cover. I love the two blue moons on it. I know that there's a new Dune movie coming out soon. I don't know if I'll see it. Maybe I will. I am so unfamiliar with the movie, with the plot, with the story. All I know is that it's really famous. I know that this is a book that a lot of people either really love or they give it a go and they're like, what is this? So I might be in that second camp where I don't know what the hell is happening in this book, but I'm excited to have a copy of my own and to get to it whenever I want. I really don't think this is a book I'll get to anytime soon. It's just an addition to like my ever-growing library that hopefully I can pick up, or if I have any friends who are like, oh, I've always wanted to read that, I can loan them this. So I'm just really excited to have my own copy. And again, there's something so lovely to me about paperbacks and how well loved it is, how old it is. It just makes me really happy. Next is another book that I found while thrifting. Are you seeing a theme here? And that is For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough, which is a choreo poem by Ntozake Shange. I personally had never heard of this book, but upon reading the cover, it says it's a major motion picture directed by Tyler Perry. It definitely seems like this book or this choreo poem has influenced a lot of art since it came out in the 1970s. I know little to nothing really about choreo poems, but I'm just so excited to get into this. It is so itty bitty. It was so easy for me to have missed it. So this is just a public service announcement, if you will. When you're going to Goodwills or thrift stores and you're looking for books, definitely don't disregard the tiny, tiny little spines. Pull them out, look at the covers, read the actual title, because you might miss the really small ones. I honestly don't really know what this book follows. I'm assuming based on the title though that it will discuss race and mental health maybe, and maybe even some darker topics. But what I love about it is this format. It looks so interesting. So we have some pages here that look almost kind of like normal narrative, maybe more like stanzas and poems. And then we get into this more fragmented look here. I don't know if this is going to be kind of more poetic and reflective or if it's going to have an actual narrative. Either way, I'm just like genuinely geeked to read this. And stay tuned for some upcoming vlogs. Subscribe if you want, because I will be reading this month in July. Next, we have a really exciting book that I'm so excited to tell you all about, and that is Green Cane and Juicy Flotsam, short stories by Caribbean women. I love, again, every single cover I'm gonna say I love it, but honestly, how can I not love it? This beautiful vibrant teal and that yellow and that hot pink, and then we have this illustration of some fish. This is a book that I found while I was on vacation. I was on a camping trip and we went to this little bookstore in this older woman's home, and she just sells books out of her house, and this is one that I picked up there because it just seems so incredibly unique and lovely. I am so excited to read this book because I have actually yet to read a series or a collection of short stories that are by various authors, and the fact that these are all written by Caribbean women is something that I am extra excited for. I have been loving Caribbean authors lately, and I definitely need to read more. And I just think that this is such a wonderful way to find new authors that maybe have written their own individual pieces or novels that hopefully I can look up later if I really resonate with a certain story. So this was originally published in 1991, so I just feel like it was such a good find in this like used bookstore. It was just like such a memory for me. It was just such a wonderful place to be, in this like woman's house with all of her used books. And again, I just love this cover. I love everything about it. I'm so excited to read it. Short stories are something that I really enjoy, but I don't tend to gravitate towards, but I feel like this is something that is so summery, so delicious looking. Like I just want to eat this cover so bad. Take a little nibble off of it. So that is Green Cane and Juicy Flotsam. Flotsam, one of those. Next we have a book that I have actually chatted a bit briefly in my vlogs. It is included in my July TBR, but that is Human Acts by Han Kang. This is the same author as The Vegetarian, and I have yet to read any works by her. So the fact that I was able to find this in a little free library was just absolutely amazing to me. I guess I will stop and pause and show you all the cover of each one, because honestly, I so easily gravitate towards beautiful covers, and this one is just absolutely stunning. So this book has been translated, and it follows a young man as he is like brutally murdered, and it kind of seems like it follows the community and his family and those around him and the aftermath of how they deal with that trauma, how they deal with this loss, and how they grieve with it. Definitely seems like a very sad, very intense piece of literary fiction, but I've heard pretty wonderful things about it. So I am just really excited to read my first Han Kang book and maybe then hopefully find a copy of The Vegetarian used. I think that would be absolutely amazing. So that is Human Acts. Next we have a book that I found in a little free library. This honestly has to be one of the like kookiest, quirkiest finds that I've picked up recently. I was just immediately drawn to the pink cover because I love the color pink so much. It's my favorite color. I and Claudius Travels with My Cat by Claire de Vries. Such a cute cover, but what really got me, friends, what really got me, this author photo. How can I not like fall in love with this woman holding her cat in a bikini on a boat, like just total vibes. So this sounds like a book that might actually completely break my heart. When I first read the inside flap, I was like, this is so bizarre. We actually have, it's an old discarded library book, so we have like an old checkout slip. But when I read the inside, it is saying it was an unpredictable road trip. They traveled from New York to the Appalachians. She's meeting all of these people. It's her and her cat named Claudius, and they just meet all of these kooky characters and just fun people. But then it goes into, at the very end here, it says, a cat trapped in a human body. Claire learned to let go of the past and of the future. A human trapped in a cat's body, Claudius learned to love Kentucky Fried Chicken and to snore at speeds of 90 miles per hour. So that made me really question what the heck this book is. I'm like, is this, I thought it was like a memoir of her and her cat traveling around the US. But upon further reading, I'm like, is this like magical realism? Do they swap bodies? This woman, Claire and Claudius, is it like auto-fiction? I still don't quite really know what this book is, and that makes me really excited. But when I did look it up on Goodreads, I read that the book follows Claire and Claudius and reads a little bit more like nonfiction, like a memoir, and all of their strange travels, but she decides to take Claudius on the trip because he's old and she knows he's not going to be around much longer. So that's what I mean with like, this book might actually make me cry, and I don't really know when I'll be emotionally ready to read this because I have kitties, and that is something I just don't mess with, because that loss, that grief is incomparable to anything else. So yeah, maybe one day I'll get to it, but I just think it sounds really kooky, really fun, really quirky and weird. Some of the unique characters they meet along the way are celebrity pet hairstylist, astronauts, voodoo snakes in New Orleans, psychic cowboys, all of these things. Like, it just sounds like such a romp, and it sounds really good, but then it also sounds like it could literally break my heart in half. So we'll see, but that is I and Claudius. Next, we have a book that I've been wanting to read for a very, very long time and have never been able to get my grubby little hands on it, even though every fall, I swear, every fall I try to get ahead of the Halloween buzz with this book and try to reserve a copy of it from my local library, but it is usually on hold for weeks, and that is Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. I was able to find this copy used at Goodwill. I freaking love this copy. I love this copy so much. That bright yellow, it is everything to me. It feels so like 70s. And then on the back here, look at Anne Rice. Why do I feel like her and I would just get along so well? It's the bangs, this outfit. I've definitely worn something very similar. I am just genuinely so excited to finally read An Interview with the Vampire. This is a cult classic. It is just a big classic. I feel like everyone knows this one. I feel like most people have read it except me. I honestly don't even really know the plot, so let's take a peek. The time is now. We are in a small room with the vampire, face to face as he speaks, as he pours out the hypnotic, shocking, moving, and erotically charged confessions of his first 200 years as one of the living dead. Sounds like so much fun. I am so excited. This is definitely a book that I'll keep in mind around the Halloween, October, fall time, but like this cover is speaking to me. I just feel so lucky that somebody donated a bunch of Anne Rice books when I last went to Goodwill, and I was able to find this because wow, I can't get over this cover. Like, it is stunning. Like, I love thrifting for this reason. You just find copies and covers that you've never seen before, and I'm just in love. Like, look at that beautiful spine too. Oh, next we have another book that I found at that older woman's in-home bookstore. And this is a huge 5-star prediction book for me, and I've talked about it pretty recently on some of my vlogs, but that is In the Palm of Darkness by Mayra Montero. I don't know if you can tell from kind of this shiny glossy cover, but there is this like blood red frog and this handprint in the back. This book was written in the 1990s, and it is translated from Spanish, I believe, and it follows this scientist who studies frogs and amphibians, and he lives in Cuba, and he's called to Haiti to look for this almost nearly extinct frog called the blood frog. And I don't know, there's just something about that I just love so much. I love atmospheric books. I love books like this where this is like a really good like moody summer kind of vibe, where it's talking about the socio and economical and political climate of Haiti at that time, talking about frogs and flora and fauna, botanical stuff. Like, I just absolutely love descriptions of like rainforests and different animals, and even in their like Latin language. That is just something that I personally absolutely love as a reader. I love reading descriptions of beautiful atmospheres like that. I'm just really, really excited to get into this. This is a huge 5-star prediction book for me. I cannot wait to read it. It sounds like the perfect moody, dark summer kind of book for me. I cannot wait, and I cannot wait to tell you all my thoughts on it. Again, this was just such a good find that I had never heard of before, and that's what I absolutely love about thrifting, is just finding books that I never hear of. Next is another book that I found while thrifting at Goodwill. I had actually gone there and I saw this book. I was this close to buying it, decided not to, waited like, multiple weeks to go back, and when I did, this book was still there. So I kind of took it as a sign of like, you should probably just get it, because I had started thinking about it when I was away from the thrift store, and that is Just Like Beauty by Lisa Lerner. This is, I don't know how to describe this book. It is very bizarre, very quirky, very kooky and weird, just my jam. Sounds like kind of like literary fiction, YA, sci-fi. Let's just read the inside flap, shall we? Because I don't know if I'll ever be able to describe it. For 14-year-old Edie Stein, the road to Deansville's annual Feminine Woman of Conscious pageant is strewn with pitfalls. True, she's an ace at mystery powders, and she's come a long way in freestyle walking and better person skills. But she's increasingly troubled at the prospect of offing her genius bunny, Alice Jones, in the Sacrificial Rabbit event. And despite the strenuous coaching of her mother, training for the Electric Polyrubber Man erotic arts competition has been a disaster. Edie just can't stop thinking about the girl next door, sexy Lana Grimaldi. A gang known as the Blowtorchers runs amok, maiming would-be contestants. Boys will be boys, but disfigurement is grounds for disqualification. A plague of mutant grasshoppers storms the neighborhood topiary. An underground suicide cult gains momentum and begins to exert a disturbing pull on Edie's imagination. I mean, it goes on a little bit, but what? What is this book? Like, what does this mean? I don't quite understand. I have no idea what to expect. It sounds like the most bizarre, weird, interesting, creative world. This was published in 2002. I have never heard of it before. I'm oddly very curious about this book. Like, it could be really good, or it could be just like the most bizarre thing in the world, which you never know. That might honestly be my new favorite book, who knows? But I definitely just thought, like, why not give it a try? It sounds so weird, and I love weird books. I love when authors really put themselves out there with something so quirky and strange, something unlike any other piece of literature that we can find now. Like, the author just has such a strong sense of what they're doing, what they're writing. They have a very strong vision of what this world looks like, and I just really appreciate that in authors. So that is just like beauty. Next is another book I found while thrifting, and this is such a stunning book. I am just so excited for it. It is called The Language of Flowers, and is a book of Victorian floral sentiments. I know The Book of Flowers is a really popular book, and it's very, very well known. It has all of these different flowers and their illustrations, but then also what they mean. So forget-me-not means true love, foxglove means insincerity, frankincense is the incense of a faithful heart, Fraxinella is fire, and fuchsia is confiding love. So it just talks about, like, you can make these different bouquets, all of the different flowers, meanings. I don't know, like, I just find this stuff so delicious. Like I said, I love descriptions of botany and flowers and plants and herbs and seeds and all of that stuff. Like, I really love it. So who knows, like, when I'll actually use this in my real life. Maybe when I'm wedding planning and looking for flowers to use, or who knows, but I just feel like it's just such a good, like, nonfiction piece to have. I love that it's a paperback. I love this format, honestly. I love that it's more of like a square almost. And again, the illustrations in this are just so cute. I just feel like this was a really good addition to, again, my growing library. It doesn't mean I'm gonna actually read this thing cover to cover. It doesn't mean that I will even actually really use it frequently, but I just feel like this is just such a must-have. If you find it at a thrift store for 99 cents, why wouldn't you get it? You know, that was kind of my rationale. So that is The Language of Flowers. Next we have a brand new book that I found at Dollar Tree. So what I love about Dollar Tree is they do sell brand new books there, but usually they were published in like 2015, 2017 to like 2019, and that kind of like range. So I picked up Legacy by Jessica Blank. This definitely gives me like old Tumblr kind of vibes. We got this girl standing on a tree, but I just love this like moody pine tree reflection here. So from what I gather from this book is it takes place in the 90s, and it follows this teenage girl who is a little lost. She's a little wayward. She definitely has gotten into some trouble in high school. She's dating this like bad boy, of course, and it takes place in Tacoma, Washington, which is just vibes, right? Like, that's just like moody, perfect fall vibes. Oh, I'm here for it. But then she decides to join this very radical environmentalist group. I don't know if it's in her high school or outside of it, where she just becomes really enthralled and obsessed with the wilderness and wilderness prevention and protecting the wild, really. It definitely seems like this is like a YA story of coming of age, but then also what is she willing to give in order to protect the nature around her. It's a pretty slender book. I just feel like this will be like a really atmospheric one. I'm trying to allow myself to have more YA in my life. Typically I pick up a lot of literary fiction, a lot of just kind of like random odd books from all over, but I realize that I do enjoy reading YA when I need a break in between books. I do enjoy them. They usually don't become my favorite books of all time, but I do typically have like a really good time with it. So I feel like this one would just be really lovely to have in the fall time with this Washington Pacific Northwest atmosphere, 90s vibes, like a lot of edginess, moodiness, teenage angst. I love like feminine teenage angst in literature, so that is Legacy. Next, I found this book at Goodwill yet again, and that is Lighthead by Terrance Hayes. This was the National Book Award winner, and it came out in 2010, yet I have never heard of it. We have these beautiful paintings on the cover, and this is a collection of poetry. I don't typically read poetry, but it's definitely a genre in a book style that I definitely want to read more from. So when I'm out and about, I love looking for little poetry collections like this. Like this poem here is called Fish Head for Katrina. The first stanza reads, "The mouth is where the dead who are not dead do not dream." And I just love that. I think that's beautiful. So it seems like it is a kind of mixed media. Again, we have these almost like stanzas, these lists, and then we have more kind of traditional looking poetry. I am really genuinely looking forward to this one, and I think it was just such a good find for a used book. These last two books in just this little stack here are both books that I found at Goodwill used for 99 cents each, but I was blown away. Like, I honestly couldn't believe that I found copies of them because they are very popular. They came out pretty recently, so I was just kind of shocked. As you can tell from this book haul, I do like to find most of my books all thrifted and used. It's very rare that I buy a brand new book for myself. These books I had definitely heard of, and they might be very familiar to you as well. So the first one is Luster by Raven Leilani. I have heard so many wonderful things about this book. Look at that beautiful shiny cover. It is beautiful. Do you all recognize this cover? Have you seen it around? Because I have seen it from so many different booktubers channels. So I have heard really wonderful things about this book, but I don't know much about the plot, and if I try and go off of what I remember, I might be incredibly wrong, but I do believe it follows a young millennial woman who is just kind of very wayward, stumbling through choices, and she ends up entering into a relationship where it's a hetero couple. Yes, I was correct. Our main character Edie is stumbling through life, and she meets Eric. He has an open marriage with rules with his wife, so she enters into their home with him and his wife, and then they also have an adopted black daughter. Edie herself is black, so she thinks that she might be the only black woman their adopted daughter knows. It reads, a haunting, aching depiction of how hard it is to believe in your own talent and of the unexpected influences that bring us into ourselves. So this just sounds like a really stunning literary fiction that talks about race and sex and relationships. So I am genuinely excited to get to this at some point. I have heard really, really wonderful things about it from booktubers that I really love and trust. So this was just such a good find. I honestly can't believe I found this used, sitting there looking so divine. Look at that cover. It is so stunning. And then the last book in this stack is also in that same vein of I can't believe I found this at Goodwill, just sitting there and it wasn't taken, like just how? And that is Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. So this is the prequel to Practical Magic, which I read many years ago. This is definitely a chunky book. I absolutely adore this cover. I think it is so stunning. I have read quite a few of Alice Hoffman's books. I adore her writing style. It's something that always makes me feel nostalgic for a life that I've never lived, and I think that just shows like how talented she is as an author. I really enjoyed Practical Magic, but I found that I enjoyed the movie a little bit more. So I am really excited to read Magic Lessons at some point. I don't think this is a book that I'll get to anytime soon, but just based on the cover, it is just giving me like fall, moody, witchy, like November kind of vibes, so we shall see. But the inside reads, where does the story of the Owens bloodline begin? With Maria Owens in the 1600s when she's abandoned in a snowy field in rural England as a baby. It talks about Salem, Massachusetts, and magic and love. I'm so excited. So even based on that, like I said, November might be a good time to read it with that snowy atmosphere. I am really excited to read this. I thoroughly enjoy just the vibes and the atmosphere and the family dynamics in Practical Magic, so I'm really excited for this one. I just feel really, really lucky that I was able to find it. I can't believe my luck, honestly. Okay, friends, here we go. On to the last stack here. Okay. There we go. All right, this first book on top here is a book that I found, again, brand new at Dollar Tree. And that is Natalie Tan's Book of Luck and Fortune by Roselle Lim. I think it is such a cute cover. Look at those little illustrations. Look at that gold shiny text. It's so cute, and I love this hot pink spine. It's beautiful. So again, we have just a cozy, comforting YA book. That's kind of the vibes this is giving me. That was the reason I picked it up and wanted to read it, because it is just giving me just springy, summery, kind of lighter YA reads. But it does follow this young woman named Natalie, and her mother passes away. They hadn't spoken to each other in 7 years, so it does talk about their very difficult relationship that they had with each other. So she decides to go back to San Francisco, where she grew up in Chinatown, and from there she sees that the neighborhood has changed so much. A lot of the restaurants aren't doing well. They're going out of business, they're closing down. So she decides to cook 3 recipes from her grandmother's cookbook to aid her struggling neighbors before the restaurant will succeed. Unfortunately, Natalie has no desire to help them try to turn things around. She resents the local shopkeepers for leaving her alone to take care of her agoraphobic mother when she was growing up. But with the support of a surprising new friend and a budding romance, Natalie starts to realize that maybe her neighbors really have been there for her all along. And Helen Hong is quoted on the back for saying this book is vivid and lyrical with a touch of magic. So that just sounds so sweet, doesn't it? It just sounds sweet and refreshing. Another trope that I absolutely love in books is just descriptions of food and cooking. I love it. I can't cook for shit. I'm so bad at cooking. I'm not good at it at all. I don't really enjoy cooking. So reading about other people cooking, like it brings me so much pleasure. It's so much joy. I just feel like this will be like just a really sweet, lighthearted time. Again, a paperback that we love. Next is a book that I found at Goodwill, and that is One Day by David Nicholls. I can't remember which booktuber was suggesting or recommending this book to their viewers. I honestly can't remember, but somebody that I watch, somebody that I obviously admire and enjoy their recommendations. So I knew when I saw this at Goodwill that I recognized the cover. I knew that some booktuber at some point in my booktube watching history recommended it. So I was like, oh shoot, yeah, let's get it. Honestly, this book gives me Comet vibes. I don't know if anyone has seen the movie Comet. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is beautiful, it is sad, it is like, just the colors, the music, the soundtrack, absolutely amazing. So if you take nothing away from this book haul today, maybe just go watch the movie Comet. But this just gives me such Comet vibes. The back reads, it's 1988 and Dexter and Emma have only just met. But after only one day together, they cannot stop thinking about one another. Over 20 years, snapshots of that relationship are revealed on the same day, July 15th of each year. Dex and Em face squabbles and fights, hopes and missed opportunities, laughter and tears. And as the true meaning of this one crucial day is revealed, they must come to grips with the nature of love and life itself. So that just sounds a lot like Comet, where like missed opportunity, what could have been, what would their relationship have looked like if it went a different way, if things were said, if things weren't said, if different decisions were made. That is the kind of like vibe I'm picking up on this, but I could be completely wrong. But I'm just genuinely excited for this because I did hear that it's not a typical romance, which is not something, it's not a genre that I gravitate to. I don't typically gravitate towards romance, but definitely it seems more about like a love story, a literary fiction love story, which I can definitely get down with. So I am genuinely excited to read this at some point, maybe soon, who knows. So that is One Day. Next is a book that I found brand new at Dollar Tree, and that is Read Me by Leo Benedictus. I love this cover. Ooh, it's so simple, but this sounds like a very eerie book. I will read this little flap in here from an excerpt of the book because it's so eerie to me, and I think this just sounds like such a sinister, good book for, again, fall or winter time. But it reads, try it yourself. Go out, pick somebody, and watch them. Take your phone and a notebook. Persist. What begins as a confluence of yours and another person's journeys, on the train maybe, or leaving a cinema, gets into an entanglement. You follow, feeling that it's not really following because you're going the same way. Then, when they at last reach their office, you feel the clutch of a goodbye. It's normal, but how many times do you think the person being followed has been you? Oh my gosh. So then it continues from there and says, Read Me is a seductive, haunting novel that holds a sinister mirror up to the ways in which we observe, judge, and influence people. Benedictus's prose commands and draws readers into the dark, manipulative mind of a serial stalker as he targets different women, escalating his efforts until he settles on Frances, a bright young professional whose career is set to take off and whose life he proceeds to unravel from the inside out. Sounds so eerie, so creepy. I think this would be just like such a fun book to read, and this was published in 2018. So thank you, Dollar Tree, for always just having like such unique books that I've never heard about, but that just sound so intriguing like this. Dollar Tree actually had like several of my favorite books ever that I found there, so definitely go give it a go if you have Dollar Trees near you. This kind of gives me the vibes of Butterfly Skin by Sergei Kuznetsov, which is a book that I found at Dollar Tree last year, and it was one of my favorite books of the year last year. So this is definitely giving me the same kind of like eeriness, serialness, but also it seems like the writing might be really incredibly haunting and eerie and horrifying, and I am really here for it. So that is Read Me. Next we have another book that I got at Dollar Tree, brand new, and that is called The Sea Beast Takes a Lover by Michael Andreasen. Andreasen? I love this cover! Look! A little sea monster with heart eyes. So this is actually, again, a collection of short stories all by the same author, and it just seems like It is filled with a lot of imagination, maybe some lyrical writing, some whimsical content. The back reads, dazzling and delightful, with its feet only slightly tethered to the world we know, the sea beast takes a lover, explores family, faith, and longing through a kaleidoscope of surreal landscapes and spellbinding characters. Oh my gosh! So some of the stories include elements like an extramarital affair is rudely interrupted by an alien abduction. There's a reluctant caretaker's attempts to manage his kind-hearted headless sister. And in the title story, a group of sailors find their ship commandeered by an aggressively love-struck kraken. How whimsical, how sweet. I just feel like this sounds like, again, a book that might just be like a good breath of fresh air with each story. It just sounds really fantastical, magical realism, whimsical, maybe some folklore in there. And I don't know, it just sounds like really sweet, and I think this copy is just absolutely adorable. So that is The Sea Beast Takes a Lover. Next is a book I found at a thrift store while I was away on my camping trip again, and this is a nonfiction book that I think looks really, really interesting, and that is The Secret Lives of Color by Kassia St. Clair. Oh my gosh, look at that. Look at that cutie cover. I think I've actually seen quite a few different booktubers talk about this as being like a really interesting nonfiction book. It feels a little bit like a coffee table book. I don't know how I would actually read it or go about it, but I don't know if you can tell from these ends here, each page has its own color, the name of that color, and then the origin of that color. When did it become popular? How was it discovered? Like, what is the earliest date or most popular use that color is known for? Like here we have puce. I just pulled to a random one. Let's do puce. Oh, this is so interesting. So at the very bottom of this section called puce, it said that the color was originally known as Paris mud. It just sounds like really, really interesting. I think that this is a topic that I just get super interested in, super fascinated in. I love colors, obviously. Who doesn't really like colors? But I think that the science behind it, the history behind it, is something that I think is so underrated that we don't really talk about in terms of how color has shaped our current world or our history or our past. So I feel like this is just a really interesting one. Again, I don't know how I'm gonna go about actually reading a piece of nonfiction like this. Maybe it's like a turn to it randomly and read a little section. If you have any suggestions on how you read nonfiction or kind of like coffee table quote-unquote kind of books like this, definitely let me know. I think this is such a cool book, and I actually would like to absorb its knowledge into my system. I just want to like soak it all into my head, you know, my little noggin. So that is The Secret Lives of Color. Next is another book that I got for $1 at Dollar Tree, and that is The Strange Fascinations of Noah Hypnotik by David Arnold. This is a book that I got on my way up to my camping trip because I realized I actually didn't have at that time a lot of summery books, and I really wanted something light and fun, but then I never got around to reading it, and that's totally fine. But again, I like this poppy color. It is so fun. And this just sounds like a very, again, kind of quirky YA story that I might really like or I might find really hokey. Who knows? I don't really care. Either way, I feel like it'll be kind of fun. It's a little bit bigger, but it has a little bit more of mixed media. There's some illustrations in here. It just seems really fun. But basically it follows this teenager in high school named Noah, and he seems like, you know, a quirky 16-year-old. He's really into David Bowie and studying history, and he's a swimmer, but then he gets hypnotized, and then from then he cannot stop seeing things in his family or in his life around him that he just didn't get to see before, didn't ever really think was noticeable, like a scar on his mother's face. His old dog suddenly is walking with a limp. Some things start to happen with his best friend, and he just starts noticing more subtle behaviors or subtle things around his life that he wasn't paying attention to before. And everything in Noah's life has been rewritten, everything except his strange fascinations, and that is capitalized. So what are the strange fascinations? I'm not sure, but this just sounds like, again, a fun summary book. So that is The Strange Fascinations of Noah Hypnotik. Next is the only book that I've bought in the past like 3 or 4 months that I've bought brand new, the full price. I did it. Are you proud of me? And that is The Swallowed Man by Edward Carey. I listened to this as an audiobook, and even before I finished listening to it, I knew I wanted a copy of it because I think it is one of the most unique, creative, bizarre, scary, retellings that I have read from. I don't typically read a lot of retellings, and it just might be because I don't really know of that many, but this one is so freaking fascinating, and I knew I wanted a physical copy because I want to recommend this to so many people in my life, and I want to loan them this copy, but also because even based on the audiobook, it definitely sounded like there would be illustrations in it. It sounded like it would be a little bit more mixed media, and I was not wrong. Look at all of this beautiful stuff. Some of these are really creepy. Here's a creepy one for you. Yeah, terrifying. So this is a retelling of Pinocchio, and it is all written from Geppetto's perspective as he is trapped in the belly of the whale. In the story, when he's in the ship in the whale, he's going a little kooky in this book. He is starting to lose his marbles a little bit, and this is all written as if it's his diary. He's drawing in it, he is doing all these different things. He's reminiscing on his life, reminiscing on his son that he's made named Pinocchio, talking about the origin of Pinocchio, but then he is slowly losing his marbles a little bit. He's slowly descending into madness, and the writing becomes more chaotic. The things that he's talking about start to blur between reality and fantasy. He starts making up all of these interesting kooky characters in his mind that aren't real, but he's talking about them as if they're real. It is just so well done, friends. Oh my god. I just thought this was so unique, so fun, really creepy. It definitely gave me the heebie-jeebies, but it was funny. I was actually laughing out loud while listening to the audiobook. I do think that the audiobook got a little bit old because the author narrated it, and he is very dramatic. He is very out there. He really, I don't really know the word I'm looking for, but he really kind of outdoes himself with the voices, and he gets a little bit louder and louder and louder each sentence. So I definitely think that maybe reading the physical copy along with the mixed media might be the best way to read this book. But wow, it really, really surprised me. And once I received this copy, I definitely want to read this physically now. I enjoyed listening to it, but now I am really, really pulled into reading this with my own eyes, and I think that would just be an incredible experience. I just thought it was so eerie, moody, terrifying, funny, just such a well-rounded story, very short, just so creative and so unique. I definitely recommend this book to you all. I think it was just so interesting. It was published last year in 2020, and I have not heard anyone talk about it. Let's talk about it for sure. So I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars on Goodreads, but I feel like if I physically read it, I actually might like it more. So who knows, when I reread it, I will definitely have to let you all know my thoughts, but wow, this was just such a treat. So incredible, so good. I really highly recommend it. It was so fascinating. So that is The Swallowed Man. Next is a book I found at an antique mall, which was so much fun. I love going to antique stores and looking for books while I'm there. You never really know what you're gonna find. And I found Twilight Sleep by Edith Wharton. I love this cover yet again. She's a stunner. She is a babe. Edith Wharton. Okay, I have tried to read an Edith Wharton in the past. I think I was a little too young. I didn't quite care. I didn't quite know where the story was going, and I gave up on it. I think I was like 17 when I tried to read it. But this one sounds so up my alley with the content and the type, and I know I need to read an Edith Wharton book at some point. So on the back here it reads, this was actually out of print for several decades, and this book is her superb satirical novel of the Jazz Age in 1927. Sex, drugs, work, money, infatuation with the occult, and spiritual healing. These are the remarkably modern themes that animate Twilight Sleep. The extended family of Mrs. Manford is determined to escape the pain, boredom, and emptiness of life through whatever form of twilight sleep, quote unquote, they can devise or procure. I am so excited for this book. It is definitely giving me kind of like Great Gatsby vibes, a lot of partying in the Jazz Age, a lot of character development, a lot of morally great characters. with some very morally gray decisions that they make. But I'm just very intrigued. I'm very excited. I feel like this was just such a good find. I believe I got it for like $1. And this is an Edith Wharton book that I personally had never heard of before, so it was just a really good find, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Okay, friends, we only have 3 more books to go. I hope you're all hanging in there. Hope you're all doing okay. The next book I found was actually at Goodwill again, and I was just blown away that there was even a copy of this there, a used copy, and that is The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I love this cover. Let's talk about it for a second. This is a painting, can you believe it? And it's continued on the back as well. So I have heard Ta-Nehisi Coates speak on the radio and in videos and stuff, but I've actually never read any of his works, so I'm genuinely excited. But this is a novel, and I don't really know the plot, so let's read it out loud together. Young Hiram Walker was born into bondage. When his mother was sold away, Hiram was robbed of all memory of her, but was gifted with a mysterious power. Years later, when Hiram almost drowns in a river, that same power saves his life. This brush with death births an urgency in Hiram and a daring scheme to escape from the only home he's ever known. But it does talk about the plantations in Virginia. It's probably going to be some very dense and heavy topics, but I am just really excited to read this for myself and to have my own thoughts on it, and to read, finally, a book by Ta-Nehisi Coates. So that is The Water Dancer. The last 2 books I have here were both found brand new at Dollar Tree again, and I think that they could either be really fun, very thrilling, eerie, creepy, or they could be big disappointments to me. But either way, I think let's just go in with an open mind. They're both chunky paperbacks, which we know at this point that I love. But as I always say, just take a chance on the book. Just take a chance on the book, especially if they're inexpensive, if they fit within your budget, if it's something that you are slightly interested in. Give a chance to the book that you had never heard of before, that you haven't seen anyone else talk about, because it might really genuinely surprise you. I think that's how I have found some of my favorite books of all time, is just on whim, just picking up a random book that I see, liking the cover, liking the description, and going from there. So the first book we have here is called Wicked River by Jenny Milkman? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. This cover is a little disastrous to me, okay? We have this wedding dress floating in a waterfall, maybe like some early 2000s vibes. Chunky paperback though, we like it. But when I was reading the back, it completely reminded me of the short mini-series called Harper's Island that came out in the very early 2000s. Has anyone else seen it? Because it's one of my favorite mini-series of all time. It is so messed up, it's so good. It's like a whodunit Agatha Christie kind of thing on an island off the coast of Washington, and it's just a freaking vibe. It's a mood. Anyone? But basically, this follows this young couple named Natalie and Doug, and they are newlyweds, and they're going on their honeymoon and exploring the Adirondack forest, and decide to do an isolated backcountry honeymoon. And it says on the back that the Adirondack forest is 6 million acres. I can't even fathom that. I can't even fathom that size. 6 million acres? What? But just as Natalie and Doug begin to explore the dark interiors of their own hearts, as well as the depths of their love for each other, it becomes clear that they are not alone in the woods. Because 6 million acres makes it easy for the wicked to hide, and even easier for someone to go missing for good. Sounds so eerie. Like, it could be really intense, really eerie, really like just engrossing. You can just get lost in a book like this. Or it could be really hokey, but at least it might still be fun. Hopefully, who knows? But I am going on vacation to a very isolated area in the mountains of Virginia. And I low-key want my TBR jar to allow me to bring this book, because I want to read this while I'm on a romantic vacation with my partner, scared of the wilderness, like literally in a cabin in the mountains. So that is Wicked River. And here we have it, friends. This is the last book in this book haul adventure, and that is You Were Made for This by Michelle Sachs. This cover features some beautiful looking cherries, very stunning. I picked this up, I put it back. I picked it up again, I looked it up on Goodreads, and then I was like, oh, yes, okay. It definitely solidified my decision to purchase this book after looking it up on Goodreads, because a lot of the reviews were talking about how people could not stop thinking about this book after they read it, how it was so incredibly messed up that it really like disgusted them. I love books like that. Like, please make me think about it after I finish the book. I want to be disturbed, not knowing how a plot ended and to think about it for days. I genuinely want that. So this book follows a young couple living in Sweden. They have an infant son. They moved from New York to Sweden and they're starting their new life. They're having a good time. Then the wife, Mary's closest friend, Frank, visits. And ever since their entangled childhoods, Frank and Mary have loved each other and fought like sisters. Frank slips seamlessly into Swedish life, winning over the baby and even the neighbors. But soon, old toxic rivalries reemerge. Mary starts to feel her domestic paradise is under threat, and Frank realizes that behind closed doors, marriage and motherhood look very different from the image presented to the world. But everyone inside the house has reason to fear what the others might see. And as the dark truth slowly begins to show through the cracks, Mary, Frank, and Sam will go to desperate lengths to keep their picture-perfect lives intact. Alarmingly familiar and frighteningly honest about the lies we tell each other and ourselves. Psychological suspense. I don't typically gravitate towards like domestic thrillers like this, but this one definitely sounds different. It sounds unique, especially based on the reviews that I've read of people saying that it really does stick with them and it makes them feel incredibly uncomfortable. I'm here for it. Make me uncomfortable. I dare you. So that is You Were Made for This. So there we have it, friends. Those are the wonderful books that I've thrifted since the start of this summer. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts because I am genuinely so excited to get to some of these books very, very soon. Thank you all so incredibly much for watching. I hope your summer has been going really well and I hope it continues to go well. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you all again very soon for my next video. Stay cozy, my friends. Bye!